Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show, Sailing into Oblivion podcast. I am your host, Jerome Rand, and I figured, we're just about on the cusp of taking off on our next coaching trip out to San Diego, the other side of the country. And after speaking with all of the people that I've had on the show over as of late, in the last few weeks or even month, I don't know. There's one thing that kind of keeps on plugging away in my brain, and it's sort of that thought of, is this the year to go for it? And by that, I mean, go for any sort of goal or adventure or, plan or something that you've had or have been thinking about for quite some time. Is it time to put it into action? And that's what we're going to get into on this show. I'm going to kind of pick apart a few of the guests that I've had and some of their adventures or their plans, and also a few of my own. But yeah, I think overall, I'm just going to try and make a case for why 2025 should be the year to go after it and to get into it and all that it entails. So before we start the show, like I always say, if you want to help support this show, please consider checking out the description, the links. We got everything from Patreon to one-time donations, PayPal, Venmo, all that sort of stuff. We've got the links to the books, the children's books, and the merch and all that, and then sailinginto.oblivion.com for inquiries about speaking events or having me come in, as well as some coaching. And then there's also the Amazon wish list. All right, done. Whew. I like to try and get that thing done as quick as humanly possible. Next up, let's take a sip of our delicious coffee. Oh my gosh, it's so good. We're going to be drinking that. It's Bustelo instant espresso. We're going to be, I'm sure, pounding that stuff down. Not on this first trip out in San Diego, but the next one going out from Florida to Bermuda. And then, I don't know, it just makes life so much more efficient, especially out at sea when you've got a decent brand of instant coffee rather than going through the French press and all the other stuff and the cleanup and the grounds. And I mean, I've always loved the old Mick Cafe. The breakfast blend has been my go-to favorite coffee for a long time. And I like to mix it up now and again. But yeah, it's one of those things where I found I hated instant coffee forever. Never wanted to touch the stuff. And then I think it was getting on Sailing Vessel Montana. They had some. I loved it. It tasted great. And then my man Joseph El Capitan, he hooked me up with some Nescaf too. I don't know. Well, we're going off on a little coffee tangent. So I guess shout out to one of the people that I am going to talk a little bit about today, and that's Colin Denker. He's out there prepping and getting ready for his trip to go out from San Francisco to Hawaii, Hilo, Hawaii. So, yeah, he knows I love my coffee. If you listen to that podcast, you definitely know what I'm talking about. But yeah, even on land, it is delicious. But yeah, let's get into the subject that I actually mentioned we're probably going to be talking about, and that is not postponing, but pushing forward and really making those goals and the dreams and the plans go from something that you think about and dream about to something that you're actually physically on a daily basis working towards doing. And it's time of the year right now. It's, if you're up in the Northeast, you're basically, your boats are still probably snow covered. They're hauled out of the water. They might be shrink wrapped. But we are entering that time where you're going to get those nice days every once in a while. We can start to work on the boats. And the minute I get back on Sparrow when she's out of the water, the dreams and the ideas of adventure just start to sort of percolate. And now suddenly I'm kind of like, ooh, there's a whole world out there. I just got to get this baby ready and back in the water. I don't know. I think it is a fine time to do a little bit of not only planning, but dreaming, a little soul searching, a little bit of honesty where we're really taking a hard look at our goals and what, we might be in that situation where we've been talking about a certain trip for a long, long time, many years, decades even, who knows? And for one reason or another or 100 other, we've never actually moved forward on that idea. And maybe we've moved in increments and we're trying to check off a list, but in reality, we really haven't done the real key things to be able to move forward and start our trip towards that. Well, that I think is indicative of a need for a reassessment in the actual goal. It's one of those things in my experience, if I don't have that fire in my belly, that passion, that need to actually go after a certain adventure or trip or something like that, or a goal, I find that I don't have the energy, and I tend to grab on to anything I can do to procrastinate it. It's just not something, it's something where I like the idea of it more than I actually like actually going out and doing it. And that's where sort of that honesty game really plays a good part and is valuable to sometimes just sit down and be like, okay, well, wait a minute. I know we've been working towards wanting to do this for a long time. Everybody knows me as the person who is eventually going to go out and do this thing. Well, I still haven't done it, but I'm still talking about it. And I don't know. I mean, there's definitely, I've met quite a few people who are in that realm. They love that realm. They want to be in that realm. And that's sort of their comfort zone. And as long as they're okay with it, because I'm not trying to like judge anybody or make anybody feel like, oh, geez, I'm getting picked on here. Cause that's not the point. That's this podcast and what I'm talking about is more about, if anything, just kicking the pants by the end of it to say, let's get going. That's sort of the goal. So please don't take my words as me trying to shove anything down anybody's throat. But I've met a lot of people that are in that situation, and they don't ever actually go. And I think the only time it gets kind of, I don't want to say sad, but it's not a great situation is when the excuses start flying of why you haven't gone and why you're not actually going after it, and those start piling up. And then you almost get lost in those, and that's when, again, I think that really key, like sitting down and being like, okay, let's assess this situation. What are my goals actually? What do I actually want to do? Because one of the things that can happen too over a long enough time frame, suddenly you can find that, oh, geez, I've definitely changed a lot, and that used to be something that I wanted to go after, but it's definitely not anything I want to try now. But I'm sort of stuck in that narrative because I've been harping on about it for so long, sort of thing. And again, I think it really does just come down to having to sit, having to think, having some coffee, and really just sort of reassessing what you're looking to do, how you want to do it, if it's feasible, and probably more important than anything, if it's actually something that's going to make you happy and get you to where you want to go. And the reason I'm kind of going on about it now is this is like the perfect time for those that have been on the adventure for a while now. I know quite a few that are down there in the Bahamas making their way to the Dominican Republic, and their adventure is just going to continue. I can tell you, every single time I have talked to these people, there is a joy and maybe even just a little fear, but definitely a joy in their voice because they're out on that adventure and they're living it, and they had to push through quite a lot of misery and fear and problems and problem solving to get to that point. But you ask them, was it worth it? And hands down, they've all told me, absolutely. 100%. They're living their dream at this point, and it's very exciting. It's also very energizing to an old sailor like me who remembers those times. I remember being in the Virgin Islands back in 2016 and early 2017 trying to figure out how the heck this solo sailing thing worked and going through the rough patches to find the good ones and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I mean it's an amazing way, I think, to really press yourself into action when you are in contact with those who are actually going and reaping the rewards. Sometimes it's a little bit less enticing when, you hear of them going through terrible breakdowns on their boats or stormy conditions at sea or cold, miserable, sitting in the boatyard in the snow, all this sort of stuff. You're sort of like, geez, I'm glad that's not me. Well, make a case. Let me make a case for why that's actually not the right frame of mind, because that's sort of suffering and that sort of overcoming of obstacles is what leads to that pure joy and that sense of adventure. I mean, a real adventure is never going to be something comfortable and totally secure and safe, and you're never out of your comfort zone. I mean, that's like the opposite of the definition of adventure. I mean, what's that old quote? Like, the adventure truly begins when things stop going according to plan. Or you could translate that too: when things start going wrong, that's when the adventure truly starts. And I have 1.5 million examples of that in my life. But sitting down and talking to Kirsten and her voyage around the world solo nonstop in the Golden Globe 2022, I mean, she went through tons of both physically demanding and uncomfortable and miserable situations, as anybody who enters the Southern Ocean, the most isolating, dangerous freaking chunk of water on this planet. I don't care what you say. I mean, obviously I've seen some pretty scary situations in the North Atlantic, in the Gulf Stream, all that sort of stuff. But there's something about being way down at the bottom of the world that really brings home the whole idea of nobody's coming to help you. There's no Coast Guard. There's no nothing around you down there. So you definitely have to watch out. But in her voyage, both physically and mentally, there's always going to be those nasty, horrible times, but they lend themselves to the greatest joys and relief and also learning moments, because when you do battle your way through and you don't give up, you find yourself with this sense of accomplishment that you cannot find if you do not go through some of that stuff. And I guess I'm making, if anything, I'm trying to impress upon the fact that there's a lot of things and ideas and what ifs that sometimes will prevent us from trying to go after what we're trying to go after. Geez, well, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? And then it's very easy to say, well, I know a solution for that. Let's haul the boat back out of the water and let's replace all those things. And, 6 months from now, then we'll be more ready, and then we'll be ready, we'll be on our way at that point. Well, typically what's going to happen is that within 6 months, some other things are going to kind of pop up. Those fears and those worries are going to pop up for sure again. And your brain's going to trick you into saying, well, what about we replace the entire rudder because, that's original. And then it's like, well, let's haul it boat out. And so in 6 months, then we'll actually be ready. And this time we're going to get going. Well, that's what we want to absolutely avoid. And I think one of the biggest things when dealing with those what ifs, because I mean, put yourself in Kirsten's shoes. She had done some pretty substantial solo sailing. She's done crewing down in the Cape Horn area, the Falklands, Antarctica. So she's seen really ugly weather. She's had a lot of great tutelage from fellow sailors working on pelagic and all that. But, sitting in France at the start of this race to go all the way around the world, 28,000 miles or something like that. And, the fears and the what ifs and the concerns are almost, almost unbelievable and almost never ending if you let them sort of take control. And I should say, the absolute best things that I think prevent those feelings from taking action in you, i.e. making you be like, well, we're not ready yet, let's not go yet. One is going to be sitting down and really telling yourself that, yeah, dude, I can handle a lot. I trust myself, I trust my boat, I trust that whatever adventure or challenge that I'm going after at this point, I'm going to be able to deal with whatever little things pop up, and I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to make it back safe and sound. Having that mantra in your head, like, yes, I can handle it. I can handle it, because you can. I think that helps to dampen down those worries and those anxieties that are there, obviously, to protect you. It's your brain trying to protect you because, adventures are dangerous. And I think deep down, our subconscious is like, well, are we sure we want to do that? Well, we have a little thing called trying to live a great life. And that's an inherent trait, I think, in all human beings. And I think we have to fight sometimes our instincts for self-preservation when it comes to doing these dangerous things that we like to go after. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I can only speak from my own experience and from the experiences shared by others. Luckily, I find myself in a position where I can talk to quite a few of these people and peel back a few layers of their own insights. The other thing, though, would be just to get to work. If you're worried about, let's say you're worried about your ability to perform different sort of survival situations or survival tactics out at sea. Well, what are the survival tactics then? I want to be able to heave to. I want to be able to launch and recover a drogue. I want to be able to forereach. Okay, well, let's put it on a list and let's start heading out, doing a little coastal sailing and trial and error. Essentially, let's try and do the work that's going to help us to ease back and give us that experience so that we're not quite so worried about not having the skill set that we're looking for to be able to be out there and be out there safely, and not only safely but confident, and not only confident but enjoying our time, not being riddled with this anxiety and stuff. And there's a lot of different ways, I think, where we can go out and kind of gain that experience without having to go 100% in on our goal, which might be pretty lofty, and we're not 100% ready for it. We do have to be pretty realistic when it comes to setting these goals and going after it. Now, obviously, if you follow the podcast, then you would have listened to the show with Phoenix, Oliver, and Sailing with Phoenix is a really interesting guy, and just, I mean, talk about, I think I said it in the intro, I think I used the word tenacity, because I mean, he's just trying to do anything and everything. He's risking it all, essentially, to go out there and follow his dreams in a stage by stage process, and he's going after a pretty lofty goal straight out the gate. Now, I did obviously receive quite a few emails and text messages from friends and people who were a little bit concerned. They told me, a lot of them just told me, hey, you gotta set this kid straight, which obviously it's not my job to set anybody straight. And I've always disliked one aspect in the sailing world, and that's unsolicited advice by fellow sailors. I'm fortunate that nowadays, and ever since some of my big trips, I don't really get that advice anymore. But in the past before that, I sure as heck did. And a lot of it, I never wanted it. I still don't want it. Because then you got to kind of pick through the weeds. And, sometimes when people put things in your head, you kind of start to think, oh, wait a minute. And I don't know, sometimes it's good advice, sometimes it's bad advice, all that sort of stuff. But in any event, not to go off into the weeds, essentially, he is going after it. And yeah, you know what? He might go over the bar, get out into the Pacific, see the first batch of actual weather where, you get 10 to 15 foot waves and 35 knot winds out at sea, and it's getting pretty ugly. And he might find that, I suffer so greatly from seasickness, I can't even function out there, and have to either head right back in, or it's a miserable slog to get down to like San Francisco or something like that. And now he's in San Francisco, and he knows that this goal and this dream, or the boat, or whatever, is just, it's not a feasible thing. I think anybody can sail almost any boat anywhere in the world they want. The degree of discomfort, the degree of risk is always going to be the variable. And some things aren't safe and some things are safe. My job is not to judge or condemn or do anything. I can just only offer up my own thoughts and stuff. But again, what was super cool about him and his plans, I think, is just the absolute tornado effect of just going after it, and looking forward, working through what he's dealing with, trying to, he's definitely somebody he's got his goals, he knows exactly what direction he's headed, he knows when. He's trying to work out the boat. He's been doing this huge windlass process. If you haven't checked out his YouTube, it's pretty cool. It's a lot of in-process work. It'll be really interesting to get a little more sailing stuff as far as content goes. But, they're not at that point yet. He still has some time. That idea, though, of just blindly going after it and not letting a single thing get you down, or, I can only imagine that he's got quite a few people who, the vast majority of people, I'm sure, that are connecting with him over social media are 100% supportive. But there's definitely got to be quite a few that are like, you're gonna kill yourself out there, kid. Oh man, it's gonna be terrible. The cat's gonna drown too. Who knows? Maybe I'm totally wrong on that, but you have to respect it. You have to respect the fact that just with almost reckless abandon, he's just going after it, and he's gonna set sail. And yeah, it might work, and it might not. But he's gonna find out, and I think that's probably the biggest point that I draw from speaking with Oliver, was that in the end, there's not going to be a question of like, oh, what if? There's never going to be that, oh, what if I would have, or I wish I could have. There's not going to be that regret in the future, because he's going after it. He's going rapid fire, but he's definitely going for it, and he's learning and he's working on it. And you got to respect that. And I think it can be used as a great example of, hey, if there is something in this world that you want to do, if there's some change that you need to make in your life, then just go for it. Just get after it. Do whatever it is going to take to get you in the position so that every single day you're going to be working towards reaching that goal that you're so passionate about reaching. And yeah, I think sitting down and talking with him, man, it definitely rung a few bells in my head when I thought about the whole idea of my trip around the world, and how many people were pretty concerned with what I was trying to do. And a lot of them didn't really come out of the weeds until after I got back, which I've always thought was kind of odd. But yeah, there's always going to be people who are like, dude, don't do it. You're not doing it right. You're not doing this. And that was kind of, I guess, a very long way to say, that's why I didn't sit there and say, well, listen, what you should do is you should plan your first leg to go from Oregon down to San Francisco, because you need to get south anyway a little bit further. Plus, there's going to be other boats. You might be able to link up with Colin. Who knows? There's going to be that is probably a bit of a wiser solution to do a bit of a shakedown cruise, which I think, what is it, 700 miles, as opposed to just jetting straight out into the crazy Pacific Ocean in April and or in May, and hope all goes well. So, I mean, there's always going to be, that's the nice part about the semi quote unquote coastal cruising. Even if you're 100 miles offshore on the West Coast, you're within reach of help, of rescue, of helicopters, of things like that. And that's why, sometimes we need to take a very serious look at our goals and how we want to get to them, and see if there is kind of like a safer way and all that sort of stuff. But I would never try and tell a solo sailor, you need to do this, unless they were asking, because everybody's got their own adventures, and some of the greatest and most epic stories I've ever heard are from people who had no business, by all accounts, of going out and attempting what they attempt on the boat that they attempted in. I mean, case in point, the first ever solo Atlantic crossing, Alfred Johnson, 1876, 22-foot wooden dory. How you could make it across from Gloucester to Liverpool in that, an open boat, is beyond me. But the guy did it, and he's an absolute legend. And he's almost forgotten by modern sailors. Most people that I mention his name to don't remember him, but it's not about being remembered. It's about you doing and enjoying and experiencing the life that you want to experience. Now, let's hop over a little bit, and let's say that we've got our goal. We've been working out how to go after our big sailing dreams, and we've been doing our little hops. We've been putting in our paces, and the flame of enthusiasm is starting to dwindle, either from too much time has passed, or maybe it's one of those things where you're starting to realize, I don't like it quite as much as I thought I would. I've got these big lofty goals. I still want to stick to them because I'm kind of used to sticking to them. But I'm starting to kind of just not really feel it, and I don't know exactly what to do. Well, that's the time where we just need to reassess. No one's ever anybody that's going to sit there and try and condemn somebody else for changing their plans, changing what they want to do. Just forget about them. Don't even worry about it. It's not about them anyway. It's about you. It's about what you really want to get out of life and what you really want to get out of certain adventures and certain goals. So I know I said it before, but, kind of sitting down and have a very honest assessment of what you want to do and what you want to chase after is, I think, a healthy thing. And like I said, springtime, it's like the perfect time to do all this, because, it's like spring cleaning. Don't clean out just your boat, clean out your goals, clean out your passage making dreams that you want. Pull them out, pull the charts out, take a look at it, and see if there's some other variation that ignites that flame or fans that flame a little bit more. And sometimes that's all it really is going to take. It can just be like, whoa, all of a sudden, whoo, okay, now we got something going here. This is pretty cool. Yeah. And now, kind of going back to what I've got on my plate now, moving forward, we have San Diego. We're going to do some sailing out there. Coming back to the West Coast down in Florida, we're going to be doing sailing out to Bermuda, down towards the Caribbean and back, about a 2 to 3 week trip. That one's going to be kind of interesting because it's still pretty early, springtime. We're still definitely going to see some weather while we're out there. That's part of the point, I think, of this next journey, is to weather the gale and all that sort of stuff and work on some of those tactics. Because, again, with these clients, essentially we're going to be gaining the kind of experience so that a trip from the East Coast down to the Caribbean doing the offshore route is not such an intimidating thing. And basically, once you've got that down, well, ocean crossing, all that sort of stuff, it's not really all that different. And now it's just a matter of making sure you have enough food and coffee to make it from point A to point B. So that one's going to be a lot of fun. And then after that, we're going to go up to the Chesapeake. We're going to do a little bit of a break-in on a new boat to make sure we go through all the systems and get everything sort of, I don't know, just get a good overall feel of the boat, make sure everything works, get kind of a trial run going, and then we'll be seeing them further in the future. And then after that, it's up to Lake Superior to again hop on another boat, which is going to be new to the owners. Shell, shout out to you. Passages from the Heart. Check her podcast out, YouTube channel, all that sort of stuff, and essentially get them familiar with everything on that boat. And in these trips and what these people are doing, and it's so hard for me to just label anybody like, oh, client, friend. I mean, there's just, these are amazing people that I am so fortunate to be able to get to know, not only just as people but also as sailors, and help them to achieve the goals that they're going after. And it's frankly, it's been a great way for me to get out and do some sailing on other boats with other people. I gain experience and I learn things by being on different types of boats, because if you stay on one boat the whole time, you get really attuned to it. And a West Sail is kind of a unique vessel, and it's always fun to hop on something else. It was really interesting back last year up in New Jersey to hop on. Oh my gosh, you can't even remember. It's got the coolest name. But in any event, we're sailing this essentially a race boat compared to Mighty Sparrow, and doing like 8.5 knots and all this. What was it? It started with a P. Dang it. A lot of fun and good experience, not only for me, but it's also a great experience for other people. And this is the reason I'm kind of bringing these up, is this definitely can be also a great stepping stone towards going after what you're going after. So let's say you've got this big lofty goal, but you're feeling a bit like lost in the weeds as far as like all the steps that are going to be necessary to take on such a passage or whatever it is you're aiming towards. Well, and this doesn't just have to pertain to sailing, but essentially seeking the expertise or experience of other people is a great way to not only learn and gain experience on your own part, but it's also a great way to look for and try and glean a little bit of experience and wisdom off of other people who have struggled through the pits and the ups and downs and all that sort of stuff to get to the point where they're at. And I'm not talking about like, oh, just me look at I'm talking about other sailing schools, other sailors, people that you might see stuff on their YouTube channel and you want to ask them questions and try and connect up. Those sort of things are all valid ways. If you've got questions, you can sit there and try and figure out answers to those on your own. But if you really want to just sort of fast track things, well, just ask people who might know. You do have to kind of pick through whether or not this person actually knows what they're talking about, because that does happen, unfortunately, more often than we like to think, when people who really aren't qualified to do things are essentially spouting out to the world that they're the number one expert in said subject. So you do have to kind of watch out for that, but cast the big net, ask a lot of people, get out there, mingle and talk to people who have done certain things that are close to the goals that you're going after. And then all of a sudden, boom, now you've got this wealth of knowledge, and who knows, you never know what opportunities are going to kind of come out of the woodwork when all of a sudden we open ourselves up and start asking questions and start talking to people. And then suddenly it's like, oh, man, you know, 1 minute I'm this, and the next minute I'm crewing on a boat that goes from Hawaii to Japan, like Josh. And, you know, I mean, this granted was after his solo sail all the way out to Hawaii from, I think it was LA. Yeah, I want to say it was LA. Might have been San Francisco. Either way, there's another guy who's just, you know, sort of just went for it. You know, that is full commitment when you want to just dive right in and cross that section of the Pacific Ocean from the West Coast to Hawaii, man. I got to do that trip someday. Oh man, I think that would be a lot of fun. Are we feeling inspired yet? I don't know. It's so crazy. Sometimes I just feel like I'm absolutely just so full of it. But then I get corrected by people a lot of times, and which is why I will do a podcast on it like this, and I'll put myself out there, open to whatever ridicule and comments. I hope nobody gets mad that I don't read comments very often or reply to them or anything like that. But it's just, is what it is. But yeah, I get corrected and people say, no, I need this. I need you to keep pushing. Get me any little tidbit of information. And to hear it coming from me for some reason has a little bit of validity. And I understand that. I know I'm not blind to the fact that some of the big trips that I've done are pretty crazy. It's one thing when other people who have done these round the world trips in organized races look at me and say, well, the way you did that though is far more dangerous. And they're right on that account 100%. And it's not more daring, it's not cooler or epic or anything like that compared to, a GGR racer or anything like that. The only thing is that it's the exact same route. It's just a little more dangerous because I don't have zero safety net out there. Not that they have 100% safety net, but man, to hear Kirsten going and rescuing Tapio, and oh man, it's such an amazing tale. And there's a great, I think that's probably the best one to end on. You think about that experience. You go out, you enter this race, you're taking on this huge challenge, and then your boat sinks. And you're in this life raft, and now it's a nightmare scenario. It's definitely my worst nightmare. And then you get rescued. You get plucked out by a fellow competitor, and you get this crazy story. Obviously, yes, it's heartbreaking. You lose your boat, you lose all this stuff, but you live. You live to fight another day. The ocean's always going to be there. There's other boats you can grab. And then on the other hand, you've got Kirsten, who has this great experience of rescuing somebody. And not only that, but seeing what she claimed was, one of the finest examples of keeping a positive mental attitude. By all accounts, he should have been in absolute shambles after losing his boat and being in that life raft and all that sort of stuff. And he's happy as a clam. I mean, I would be too, especially if I'm crawling from a life raft up to another sailing vessel. I'd be pretty darn stoked. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I mean, those are the type of experiences that you're only going to find if you take that leap, if you go for it. So that just begs the question: is 2025 going to be the year that you go after it? The year that you mark on your calendar the day of departure? Is it going to be the year that you finally set the goal for 2026 and now you actually start working towards it and you build your list and you start checking things off? Or is it just going to be the year where you sit down, you have a good think, and you plot and plan and you come up with those dreams that you want to go after and a valuable or viable plan to be able to reach those dreams? The question is open-ended, but I think the more specific question that I have for everybody, and this will end my show here for sure, is why not get started this year? Why not 2025? springtime. It's perfect time to plan your next adventure. Thank you all so very much for listening, for watching, for tuning in, all that sort of stuff. Share it all out. Do whatever you want to do. I appreciate the continued support from so many people, and I hopefully, maybe, if anything, this will make you think a little bit. Maybe it'll prod you, get you going, and we'll see. But other than that, thanks for listening. Till next time.